It is 4 o'clock. We are going to start on time as I promised. I can't say it happened every time, but I will do my best to keep us on time, at least here. Welcome to the end of the day. You made it through an entire day of content and conversations and connections. I've had the greatest time. I've made connections for my own little nonprofit I started. I hope you all are finding that to be true for you as well. A couple things we're going to start with here. I want to give a shout out to the winners of the showcases that just happened. So, for Farm Solutions, the winner, raise your hand. Actually, stand up when I say your name. Planet Harvest. Are you out here, Planet Harvest? Okay, I'm just going to keep going. No problem. Restaurant Solutions, Afterlife Ag. Are they all wheeling and dealing after their showcase? Like, are they not here? That could be. Okay. Consumer Solutions, Transparent Path. Okay, they better be doing deals. Okay. Okay, they chose to not be here. That's okay. Byproduct Solution was Net Zero. Okay, great job, everybody in absentia. Okay, so with all of ReFed's work, and with this event especially, we really like to focus on solutions. Everybody in a lot of sectors and a lot of industries always wants more data. And you can always use more data, but that shouldn't stop you from really focusing on the solutions, especially when things are working. And when things are working, that's really something to celebrate. And that's really what this next session is about. We are very excited. We're going to welcome 4 sustainability leaders to talk about what challenges they've faced, what they've learned, and what their successes have looked like. And we are very excited to have Kim Severson host this conversation. Kim is a Southern-based correspondent for the New York Times who reports on the nation's food and culture. She contributes to New York Times cooking website and app based on the New York Times collection of recipes and cooking videos. Before that, she was a Southern bureau chief for the Times. She won a Pulitzer Prize in 2018 and 4 James Beard Awards for food writing. So with that, Kim, I hope you're in the room. Oh my God. All right, here we go. Kim, take it away.
Thanks. Hey, do y'all just want to come? Hello? Hi, everyone. Thank you. Why don't y'all just come on up? We were going to orchestrate this in some kind of like excellent choreographed way, but we're not. So I know this is like the food waste shuffle or something. Anyway, y'all want to just sit down? Oh, here, test it. Okay, this is working.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, this is working.
Okay.
Hello.
That's all right. We all get our own. Well, hello. Thank you. We obviously have a powerhouse panel here, so I'm going to introduce Kathy Cacciola, Global Sustainability Lead for Google's food program, Michelle Mullins, who is Director of Operations for Food Loss and Waste at Tyson Foods, Jessica Synkoski, just flew in from Florida, Vice President of Sustainability and Corporate Social Responsibility for Sodexo, and Chris Franke, who leads the Global Zero Waste Program for Walmart. So clearly, if anybody can do this, these guys can. And I'm really glad that, that we have you here. We're going to have some questions at the end. So please, if you have, I think this could be a great dialogue. If you have questions for this panel, hold on to them and we'll get to it. A recent Gallup poll of consumers asked them what their biggest concern about food was, and predictably number 1 with I think 81% was the cost of food, and second was healthfulness, and third was food waste, which is I think a pretty impressive showing, and it kind of shows that food waste is really becoming part of the cultural ethos. Certainly the announcement from the Biden White House about a national strategy indicates that. But actually translating corporate will, public will, into actual reduction in food waste and making it all work, huge challenge. So we're just going to start with the one thing that you've got to have in order to figure out, you've got to know how big the problem is before you can have a solution, getting our arms around the data. Like, how do we figure out what's going on? And I know you all have done some very interesting experiments. You have, what, 200,000 employees at Google? Is that
About
right?
that.
Okay. Just a few people eating
Yeah.
every day.
Exactly.
Or now that we don't have to go back to the office every
Multiple
other day.
times a day.
Multiple times a day. So how do you...
Perhaps too many times a day.
What's your challenge with measuring, and what have you done to try to get your arms around your food waste problem?
Yeah, so thank you. It's great to be on this panel. So as part of our company-wide net zero commitment, and our net zero goal is by 2030, our food team has had a long-standing focus on reducing food waste. And for those of you who don't know, the food team at Google is literally the food team, as Kim just alluded to, that manages the cafe operations, the micro kitchens, the coffee bars, et cetera. Incredible complimentary free program for Googlers, Google employees.
You ruined it for every corporate cafeteria everywhere else, but
The standards
it's okay.
are high.
No worries.
And so we, 2 years ago in 2022, made a public commitment around reducing food waste by 50% per Googler, per employee, by the end of 2025 against a 2019 baseline. And we also committed to sending zero food waste to landfill. So the data focus for us has been key, first in developing the strategy and setting those targets, and then also, of course, measuring progress towards those targets. Two of the pieces that we really faced immediately from a reporting standpoint was around really more precisely measuring our food waste on a per Googler basis. So this is super wonky, maybe not like a 4 p.m. on a Wednesday conversation.
Maybe you could just do your karaoke song instead.
Exactly, lighten it up.
They're awake, they want to hear this.
So we had historically normalized the data by way of seated headcount, which is the number of employees in our buildings. But in the post-COVID world, as you all know, not everybody's going into the office 5 days a week. Their patterns are completely variable. So we really had to shift how we're measuring food waste on a per Googler basis, and now we're using what we call unique badge scans. So just understanding how many people are actually coming into the office and normalizing the data in that way. We partner with LeanPath, among other companies, to use their waste tracking technology in our back-of-house operations. So that's one of the key data points that we use, and then normalize with that badge scan data. But yeah, data is even for Google, it's a challenge for us to get precise information, but we use the best directional information that we have to make informed decisions to move forward.
Chris, you're kind of a data wonk, a little bit. And I say, and not that there's anything wrong with it. But what you tell me, I mean, Walmart, you've got a giant operation across many brands, many countries. How do you get your arms around waste and from a corporate level?
Yes, thank you. So happy to be here. And first off, I love that you're measuring things in per Googler. That just sounds like a really fun way to take care of data. We have Project Gigaton is on our side, another really big number we throw out. But really, 19 countries is where Walmart operates. There's 2.1 million associates around the world, and many of you, I suspect, are probably shopping in our stores every week. So how do you get around that data? It's a massive, complex web. On the back end, I get to try to make heads or tails of it. So we have a lot of different data sets, a lot of different applications. There's different business segments. A Sam's Club is using a different application than a Walmart Supercenter is using a different application than Walmart Mexico. So on the back end, we try to make a turducken of it and try to weave that in. And basically
that was a
connect all
challenge.
the
You
dots.
could weave in turducken into the panel
well done.
conversation.
Internal challenge. I mean, it's 4 o'clock, right? So,
Just trying to
got to
keep
make
things
this
light.
fun and lively. But no, we try to make heads or tails of it, and it's all about figuring out what is the right set of data to use. How do you maximize the use of that data for the greater good? Sustainability tracking performance on a goal in a silo, doing its own thing and saying, yeah, here's where we think we are this year and here's where we're trending, does absolutely nothing for embedding it in the business or driving that associate engagement if you don't give your workforce a KPI that they can tangibly use, something that's actionable. So what we try to do really the last couple of years is figure out, well, how does the business speak about data? How do they track performance? And as a retailer, it usually comes down to dollars and cents, or product inventory, tracking the management of boxes and cases and time-bound, time-sensitive things like that. So we've configured our dashboard in a way, just launched a brand new dashboard in Walmart US stores for our associates last week. but basically kind of connects the dots of how you're treating unsold food. So we take all the financial data. We know how much we sold. We know how much we discounted. But when it becomes unsold, that's kind of where the business stops tracking. So from after that, you start converting to weight. Like most of our food waste goals, like our zero waste goals, are a weight-based metric. That's really difficult to get back to that item level transparency in terms of data. So there's a lot of assumptions, a lot of estimations, but we do the best we can, convert that back to dollars to sort of paint the picture of how we're handling unsold food, how much is donated in dollars, how much is recycled in dollars, and how much is thrown away in dollars. That helps drive the business case. That gives our business one true source of information where they can all go look at the same number and know how every store is doing, and we're all looking at the same data set on the back end.
And that's obviously what drives corporate decision making, right? Data. You all did you have your shareholder meeting last week?
We did. It's a really, really fun week. So for those of you who don't know Walmart shareholders, it's the busiest week of our year, and it's really a giant party. It is.
Well, not for you, but for the people who come. You were working.
I have fun, you know.
I mean, if you live in the area and you don't work for Walmart, it's not really a party.
Not so fun. Is that your case, Michelle? You live? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for speaking up for the people who don't work at Walmart and live in Bentonville. But okay.
Yeah, we
don't want any trouble up here, though.
We wreck Northwest Arkansas and kind of take over in a really big. That's fair. But no, it's basically an opportunity where every one of our stores from around the world, every format, the management team, the associates that work there, select one hourly associate to come and show up and learn a bit more about the business, some of the initiatives we're doing. A lot of our big meetings are leadership. It's the management teams that get to come. This gives the chance for the hourly associates to show up, many of which have never traveled on a plane, left their home city, their home state, things like that. And we take over Fayetteville, Arkansas, and have concerts and parties and swag and all kinds of things.
So in all of that interaction, I'm just curious, how often was actual food waste talked about? I know you probably talk about sustainability and sort of general, but is food waste being talked about at that level?
100%. So the dashboard I was just referring to was actually debuted at shareholders. So I'm part of a broader team, our global responsibility team. And so we had a Spark Good tent that was everything people and planet. So the Walmart Foundation had representation there. Both Tyson and Walmart, our backyards were pretty impacted by tornadoes just the week prior. So we were doing a lot of like packing donation kits, food meal kits, things like that. Tyson had teams out there like actually preparing meals for the local communities. So we did a lot of conversation about food waste, in particular with our disaster relief programs, but also launching this dashboard. I was sitting in the tent right next to Feeding America and talking about how important it is to get to know your local agency partners and things like that.
So with something like the Biden initiative, does that help you all do your job? I know we haven't a lot of time to this. It is a bit like stitched together initiatives that are already happening, but I think it sets a tone. So does your corporate leadership then kind of do they perk up a little when you talk about food waste now? If it's becoming a national mandate, does that help?
I think it certainly always helps to have the topic on the national conversation. For us in particular, we already have a very big focus, so we don't necessarily need it as a nudge. But for other companies, maybe in the audience or otherwise, it may be helpful to have it as a nudge.
At Sodexo, do you have any predictions of how this will impact Sodexo's dedication to food waste? Or, I mean, will you get a big raise? That's really the question.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, anytime sustainability gets more visibility, it's a benefit, I think, to all of us in this space, because it helps to bring to life something that it's hard to wrap your arms around, of all of the aspects around sustainability. And so when we have some tangible things that we can point to, I think it's just a great conversation starter and starts to really bring to life, the efforts that need to happen and the efforts that are already happening that we can advance.
How about for your employees? I know, talk a little bit about how do you instill, because some of it is getting people on the ground, and I was talking to somebody else, like if the people on the ground aren't invested, or the supervisor right above them isn't, or things don't happen. So how do you motivate Sodexo staff to care about this?
Yeah, so at Sodexo, we work as the food service providers that are sort of behind the scenes, maybe in a cafeteria, but we're also doing energy management, waste management. And so what's great about food waste, I can't believe I would ever have to say that, but it's a very real thing that an individual employee can see. And they can make a difference with every single slice that they're doing, every single day that they are taking action in the kitchens. And so we don't have to talk about carbon reduction. What is carbon? How much, what do those numbers mean? We can talk about the actual food waste that they can see. And they're the ones that are on the front lines actually helping to fight climate change by what they're doing. And so it's a really tangible way to bring them into the story, and they're actually the ones that are making the most impact, right? It's not me talking about what should be done; it's them doing it. So it's so important to keep them engaged with their efforts in ways that make sense to them. So what do you actually need to do on the ground? And so with every program that we roll out, we have to create this package around it that really brings it to life for them so that our employees are motivated, they're inspired, they get recognized for what they're doing, the actions that they're taking, because every small step makes a huge difference for us. Every measurement that they help us with is really important. And so that's one of the reasons why we like to partner with our Lean Path system, and we use what we call our Waste Watch powered by Lean Path system, because they can see the measurements that
How
they're
does that
making.
work? Can you just back it up and just explain a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Lean Path is
I don't know if people are familiar, but
Yeah, Lean Path is a third-party vendor. I think they're here in the audience.
you here?
Our Lean Path
Andrew
folks.
is here.
Okay.
But we've been partnering with them for many years, and so they have a system that allows, it's a scale-based system that allows our kitchen staff to actually weigh the waste that they're producing, so that they can see those numbers, and ultimately they can take those reports and see what they've wasted, what they've overproduced. You input the type of waste that it is, so that you can then make a change for your menuing for the next week. You can say, hey, we ordered way too many carrots, or we have a lot of leftover carrots. Let's try to build something into Tuesday's menu that we can use.
And
that
are
in a
they
different way.
incentivized to reduce what, like, is that part of the measure of how successful they are at their job if they can manage that waste, or is it built into their performance?
In some instances, not systematically, but we do have some best in class cases where it is built into their incentives on helping to make sure we can reach our waste reduction goals, which we're right around the corner from our next goal at the end of 2025. So we're pushing hard.
What is
for
your
that.
goal for 2025?
We want to reduce our food waste by 50% by 2025
Wow.
from our 2017 baseline.
Are you close?
We're close, yes.
Okay, awesome. And let's talk about Tyson, because I think, when we talk about food, really the bottom line is we're talking about culinary, really, mostly. She's like, yeah. But I know you have kind of a technology and some strategies for taking chicken or taking product that's maybe you can, the ice cube is melting, you can see down the road that you've got to get rid of it. Tell me, what is Tyson doing to kind of manage inventory, and what technologies do you all do? And also just on the ground, the culinary approach to managing your inventory.
You bet. So at Tyson, everything this morning that the secretary said about there's an environmental motivation around food waste and there's an economic motivation, and it's kind of both. It's both and. All of that hit home for me a lot, because at Tyson, I think my whole career there, we've been talking about yield, and yield is really food waste, right? Reducing yield, reducing that issue of missing those opportunities, and it's really always been about the economics. We spent years building inventory data in our plants, in our warehouses, in our cold storage partners. And then we've spent years building our data lake in a little thing called Google, so that's out there. And, over the last few years, we started building on that data lake with first tools to help us manage the decision-making around distressed and donations and disposal. And so really making sure that we had one view of the data and segmentation of the data and who's responsible for that decision-making around inventory. And when does the decision need to be made? I remember a few years ago hearing from the donations team that is now my team, hey, we can't just donate it if you give us, a couple days. We need 30 days. And we were like, why do you need 30 days? I was like, well, people have to distribute that food within the food bank system, and then they have to eat it. So you can't just wait till the last second. And so really building tools and processes and procedures that first just supported those decisions and then began to automate those decisions so that it's no longer a personal choice about is it time to donate. This is just part of the process, and it's automation, right? And it's prodding. And then in the last couple of years, we've been building something that we call our inventory health app. And it's just that, like, look at the inventory and look at the health of that inventory, and let's project what we think is going to distress, and then let's have a plan. And that plan might be selling it, but it also might be donating it, and it also might be composting it, but let's know what the inventory is and what we expect to happen and what we expect to do with that projection. And then to that question about the culinary and the what do you do with that food, it's been about a year and a half ago, my supervisor said to me, like, well, why can't we just go ahead and donate the food right from the plant when we know there's a problem? And I was like, because you're crazy, like, that's never gonna happen. And my brother called me on his way home from a plant. He also works at Tyson. And he said, I think we're going to render drums at my plant next week because we don't have anywhere to sell them, and there's nowhere to go. And rendering is, where we cook down different products, byproducts. And that also is an ingredient in animal feed. But if you looked at the hierarchy, right? We're looking to feed people before we feed animals. And I said, just let me try. Let me try to donate it, right? And so we've built this huge partnership with Feeding America where we can take bulk product right from our plants and send it to a Feeding America food bank, and they can take that and package it in retail packaged, family-friendly, frozen items that we can hand out to people who need that food, right? And it's just a huge, huge opportunity for us. Last year, we donated over 40 million pounds of product to different food banks and charities.
And is it coming out frozen or fresh?
Both.
Okay.
Both. We
so
do
it's
both.
really the cold chain. So you've got trucks that will deliver them to the.
Yeah.
Because I think this food bank issue is very interesting, right? Because everybody thinks, oh, there's just the food banks. And anybody who's worked with food banks, it's a very challenging operation, different levels of cold chain, different levels of
That's right.
Distribution, facilities. So first of all, how big of a solution is donating food to our food? Is it like essential to it, the food banks?
Critical.
It's huge.
It's critical. Okay, and how far along are we on developing a really good system in this country? How would you rate our food bank, like the pipeline between producers and food bank? You give us a C+, a B? How far along are we?
For us, it's fantastic. We have a fantastic relationship with our food banks, and that repack option is amazing.
That's fairly new, right?
What I hope to see is for us to grow that, right? I think we're on a great path to building more opportunities to capture more food, right? And that's the other challenge, right? When we have a good year and we don't have things to donate, well, what else in our world could be donated? And that's a better solve. And that's really what we're looking at all the time with that data.
Right. And Chris, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say the opportunities, if you will, for food donations within food service are a little bit different because we are typically already having prepared foods. So it's sort of like an extra tray of lasagna or a half bake of et cetera. So in our actually, you should speak to your circumstance, Jessica, but Sodexo manages some of the food service operations for Google. And so, we're always seeking to decrease wherever possible and make sure that we're right-sizing the production level so that we're not having excess to donate. But if and when there is, our sites are then seeking out their donation partners to provide that food.
Explain how it works from your end.
Yeah, and I would say the additional challenge with the donation of prepared foods is that it's unpredictable. So it changes day to day, meal to meal. You don't know what might not sell that day or what might be overproduced, and so you can't have that as a consistent of a output for donation to really make it a much more smooth path for the food banks and for those folks in need. So it's critical to make those donations, but it's just not predictable, and so there's certainly some opportunity to improve the process because it's there's just inconsistency there, but also hunger is everywhere. So how do you reach everyone? We obviously can work around the hubs that we have, but there's a huge opportunity, and if we're going to really end hunger, there's, I think, a lot more work that could be done.
If you were the boss of the world in the which I know you're the boss of your own world, as we all should be. But what is there one thing in the system that if you could magically change in the food donation system, where do you think the biggest catch is? And if you could fix something, what would you fix?
I think it just has to be culturally a thing that we all embrace. Every person at every level has to really be thinking about food waste and how can they take whatever piece they contribute to that problem and turn it into a solution. How can they find a way to not waste that food?
We have to all be like grandmas, right? Like French grandmas, Mexican grandmas who know how to use every bit. So that's that mentality.
Yeah, it's the thoughtfulness.
And it's all connected. So it cuts across, at every part of food production, the food cycle. There's opportunity to prevent that food waste from ever happening, and if we can do that, that helps to fix the system so that we don't end up with the overcost.
Chris, I know you could fix the system. How are we going to do it?
Let me wave my magic wand. We're all getting promoted, right, after this discussion. So, no, I think everything they've said is spot on. So you think about hot rotisserie chickens in store. I mean, they have a 3 or 4 hour shelf life as a hot bird, So it has to be, we have programs in store where we'll blast chill those. That has to be done before you can even make it eligible for donation through the Feeding America partnership. So there's tools and resources like that that are huge enablers on that. But you also think about scalable solutions. What is that unicorn silver bullet that's going to solve for this? And with Feeding America's partnership, we've started talking about, there's one Feeding America as the partner over 199, 200 food banks, but there's 60,000 agency partners in this network, and they're everywhere. And so you think about changing systematic things across 60,000 agency partners that are the actual community organizations that are collecting this food. So it's very difficult. One thing we've seen that has been successful is more frequent pickups. And so the Walmart Foundation is very much working on grant giving to help build out that retail capacity. It helps the network across the entire U.S. And doing same things in similar countries as well around the world. But donations, it's a lot of it too is just data. It's knowing when is that moment when it's not going to make this to the shelf, or it's not going to make this further in processing, and you need to go ahead and pull it and optimize those logistics for the donations network rather than your own.
Are there some government regulations? I know we're loosening on that, but are there government regulations that need to change to make that work?
Liability laws, every one of our partners has to have a hold harmless agreement, but having those kind of Good Samaritan laws in play are absolutely critical to making sure that you can have a viable donation network. Otherwise, you donate product, it might be past a quality date, things like that. So standardizing date labels is another really good initiative where the customers, just like the Feeding America network, can understand what those date labels mean, what's a quality date versus a food safety date, et cetera.
I would love it if we got that straightened out. I think we're on the road to it, to actually finally eliminating some of those dates.
Sometimes it's not just the dates, but it's the purpose, right? So we had a lot of trouble donating food that was labeled for export only, and then that export market closed, right? And so now, I can't give it to the food bank because it has this sticker on it that says it's for export, and we're not.
What would categorize it as for export? Was that just simply a business decision? It wasn't a product decision?
Correct.
But the perception is
Correct.
you can't, because legally you could not,
Correct.
You got to have somebody with a Sharpie just marking
That is
Simple.
something we've
I do
done.
my best,
yes.
but
but
I'm
it
just
costs
saying.
money.
Okay, yeah. A lot of Sharpies. Do we have questions out there? We have one poor mic runner. Where's our mic person? Are you here? The poor mic person in the back. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. So you want to come up, but go ahead and I'll repeat the question if you want to come up with the mic. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Letitia Steele. I'm the Executive Director of Denver Food Rescue.
The Executive Director of Denver Food Rescue?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the mic. I appreciate it. My question is really based at the local level. So I know Feeding America does really wonderful work in their realm. We really need to think about that last mile that's taking place, and the last mile is not the food bank. The last mile is the organization that's getting the food directly to the consumer. And most people might think of them as a client. I view them as consumers. They're coming to get product, to feed their family. There seems to be a bit of pushback at a national level from the national food recovery organizations that actually put a wall between organizations like mine, where we pick it up and in 2 hours it's immediately in the hands of the consumer. When we're going to a large retail establishment, it could be, oh, we can't work with you. We have a contract. We're not allowed to give this to you. And so all of that food that is extremely perishable, that is very close to its best-by date, is rotting in a warehouse facility waiting for someone to come and pick it up. So how can we actually work together and not be competing for this food and make sure that the food's getting to the end user when it's still good and fresh?
All right. Who wants to tackle it?
Yeah, so very good question. And, to your point, like the customers, that final end destination, like that's what I meant when I'm saying like the 60,000 kind of agency partners that we have in our network under Feeding America, but I completely understand. Each individual agency partner, each outlet, each nonprofit that's taking this food and distributing it immediately to the community has a very localized need. Like the demographics in that community are going to be very different in community A versus community B. So I will say that Feeding America has some amazing tools that are already in development. They're working on Meal Connect app is one of those that we're testing. I don't know if Tyson's doing the same, but it allows basically a distress signal, if you will, like an alert of we have X amount of stuff that's got to clear and here's what it is. And it basically sends out a broad net to whoever has the capacity to come collect and pick it up. We're using the same app as well to kind of break down communication barriers so that the drivers that do come collect the food from the local churches and nonprofits and things like that aren't sitting at our back doors waiting for an associate to kind of compile the donatable goods. And then using the same kind of tools and working with them on guidance to, again, going back to those tools and resources to know when you pull what. What does good quality donatable product look like? Because it might change today, but if the pickup is 2 days from now, that it's going to be a very different story. So there are some gaps, like a lot of programs, but I think we're doing everything we can in our power to manage that through our great partnership with Feeding America. And as far as I know, it is an open partnership. It's a hold harmless agreement. And just sign on board, and that makes you donation eligible for any of our stores and clubs.
Great. Do you want to give a quick thing? And we have a couple more questions. So.
You bet. The other thing that we do at Tyson, and I can't speak to retail because we don't own stores, but we have had a long-standing program where we have community pantries in our Tyson communities where we partner with a local pantry, and we look to invest in their freezer capacity or in whatever it is that that local pantry needs to be successful. And then we set up guidelines for our locations to say, like, hey, if you have this fits within our guidelines, it makes sense to send that to your local pantry versus other options that we have. And we also have been investing in that last mile between the pantry and the food bank and the person in need of food with DoorDash. We are doing some pilots with them to say, like, what does it look like if you pay a DoorDash driver to bring food to that person at the end, right? So filling that transportation gap. So it's just, for us, it's not just about the Feeding America partnership, but we're investing in addressing food hunger in many, many ways.
Using the third-party app to deliver food, that seems like it would be a great corporate ethos for those companies too. I see somebody. Did you have a question over here?
Yeah. Great discussion, guys. My name is Rudy. I'm a journalist. I cover impact investing with Impact Alpha, and food and ag is one of our focus. I have a thematic question for you guys. Investing in food waste is lagging behind investing in food solutions. I'd love to know how your organizations are using their corporate power to invest, to bridge the gap between investing in food waste and food solutions.
What do you mean by food solutions? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just
that's what I just want to understand. You mean like hunger or?
Like
okay.
hunger.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what food solutions was. So.
Okay. I'll kind of start. So yes, again, great question. Again, from like kind of building out that retail capacity, things like that, and broadening the network, finding those strengths, what the local donation partners need. Is it a truck? Is it an additional cooler space? Is it a bigger warehouse? Is it, what is that need? All of that kind of funnels through our Walmart Foundation team. They work very closely through grant giving to Feeding America that gets distributed based on critical need assessments, things like that. So on the hunger space, that's kind of how our company provides funding to build out that capacity and the donation and recovery space. Dealing with food as waste, with this new dashboard, and I think within at least Walmart's business leadership, food waste is absolutely a top priority focal point. You'll hear people talk about that the solve for climate change, the low-hanging fruit, if you will, is dealing with operational waste. For a retailer, that's shrink, that's lost product. So everything that doesn't sell is money essentially thrown away or donated, but it has a value basically. So figuring out how to turn that business case into how we use our scale to build out infrastructure, lobby new policies, regulations, things like that. Unlocking some of the barriers that we have for dealing with food as a waste stream and managing a very vast network. There's a lot of investment opportunity going on that side as well.
Does that answer your question? I'm not sure it did.
Yeah, my question was for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, so
we have a couple minutes. I just want to make sure other people can get their questions if somebody wants to give a quick response to that, and then we'll get a gentleman over here. Thank you.
Yeah, so some of our strategic philanthropy investments have been around those repack rooms, but also in bringing food bankers together so that they can learn from each other about how to do that well and what they really need to be successful. We've also done a lot of investment with the military family advisory network to help them understand, like, why are our military families fighting hunger? What's the root cause? Instead of Tyson giving you food to hand out to military families, let's talk about why is that happening and what can we do to help you with the root cause. And so those are some of the investments that we're making in solving hunger outside of just giving food.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think maybe we have time for one or two more. Go ahead, just keep them quick so we can get one more in.
Okay, quick. First, a comment. Secretary Vilsack was talking about education, and it's great that the Googleites and the Walmartians and the Sodexans are reducing waste at their
I hadn't heard that
company.
one before.
But there's nothing more powerful.
Googlers, just to
I'm
be
sorry,
clear.
Googlers.
Googleites.
I don't know if Walmartians is right.
That's
you
the
can you
religious
can
portion
Google
of
it.
there.
You got the right
Anyway.
word.
There's nothing more powerful than a first grader telling their Google parent, why are you throwing this banana peel in the trash? Because it's going to be kids who are going to really create the motivation to create significant change.
Do you have a question in there?
The question, well, one of my questions with Walmart is like, okay, so track all the food that you bring in, but when it goes to the waste stream, it's kind of lumped into poundage. And what do you do to figure out what is it that you're not selling? Because I know a breakfast burrito in an elementary school is not being consumed. Do you have this way of tracking? You know, we're buying Chilean grapes, but they're rotting before they get here. So what's the process of monitoring not just how much is wasted, but what maybe we shouldn't be buying in the first place?
Agreed, yes. So we
Interesting
have,
question.
we'll make it super quick.
Back
but
to consumers, right?
back to consumers wholeheartedly. So on top of a wonderful product sourcing teams, things like that, to make sure that we're testing packaging innovations to extend shelf life on product, et cetera, making sure that we get the freshest product on the shelf. However, that consumer space, getting into that is something we're also working on through coalition partnerships, testing, things we can do through like the U.S. Food Waste Pact or Consumer Goods Forum Food Waste Coalition of Action. Just yesterday kind of launched a recipes microsite aimed at putting recipes directly in the homes with our customers, with recipes on nudging use of leftovers or upcycled food products, et cetera. So.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in on this, or a last comment you want to make? We're out of time. I'm sorry.
Just one quick note. Within Google, among our food service partners, we're doing something similar we call tracking by menu item, TBMI. We're using LeanPath, but within LeanPath, our operators are able to track not just by chicken, but like chicken piccata. And so that data then informs menu decision making the next day and forward.
I'm only sorry that we didn't get to your pet peeve, which is how people do not know how to dispose of their garbage and trash and use a compost bin. Sorting. That's for next year. Hopefully, I have a whole panel on sorting.
The challenge is, if you can sort your forks and knives in your kitchen, then why can't you sort your glass and your aluminum?
Agreed.
You have my vote. Anyway, thank you all.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Kim and panel. That was awesome. One more round of applause for that group. Okay, so we are going to close out with a very brief conversation. I've met the people who are doing it. I think they can anchor this day. They seem like a good vibe for pre-happy hour. I think they can handle it. They'll bring the energy. We are going to talk about AI, and I think Dana mentioned we haven't gone 10 minutes without talking about it. I think we went 10 minutes without saying AI, so I'm proud of us. Good job, everybody. So I'm about to bring these two up. We know technology is driving major impacts across the space, and now with greater accessibility to AI, there are solutions that are making us wonder, what does all this mean for food waste? So we invited Mike Wolf to answer this question. He is the CEO, founder, publisher, and editor-in-chief of The Spoon, the site for daily analysis and reporting on the food tech revolution, and one of our media partners for the summit. He will be, there are photos, there you go. Ash Harwood, he is ReFed's VP of Data and Insights. He oversees the team that's analyzing the impacts of food waste solutions from high tech to low tech. And I'm told he has lots of thoughts on how technology can and cannot help this field. Okay, so come on up and bring us home to happy hour.
Ash, I think we both need new pictures. Those are pre-pandemic, I think. More gray hair now.
They just made me retake mine, and I still think I'm going to defer to the one from last year. Hi. Thanks for, I know we're standing in between y'all and having a beverage and doing some socializing somewhere out there today. So we're going to make this really insightful and tight. That is the goal here. And just, as we heard, we're really looking at how AI can or cannot help solve a lot of these issues around food waste. And actually, I think that this is a really good segue from the previous section because, we heard a lot about how hard it is to measure things, and most importantly, how you actually take an insight, whether it's some sort of just like calculated rules-based sort of calculation or a prediction, and turn it into action. And that is kind of the holy grail. And so we're going to hear from Mike here, who has been thinking about this for a long time. So I just wanted to just start off and maybe you could just quickly tell us a little bit about what the spoon is and how you got interested in technology in the food space?
Yeah, I've been writing about consumer technology for a couple of decades now. Worked for a publisher called GigHome. Some of you may remember it. Wrote a book on the smart home. And then I realized there's all this innovation happening around food. I live up in Seattle. That's where the modernist cuisine movement is. And so at the time, 10 years ago, people were bringing IoT connectivity and smarts to food and cooking. I just was really fascinated by that. And so for the past year, though, I've been on a journey really trying to understand how AI can reshape the food system from farm to fork. And there's all sorts of interesting alpha developers building really cool products. And maybe we could talk about some of those.
Awesome. So as I think everybody knows here, the food system is not a single thing. It is this massive, sprawling, decentralized thing with very different problems for waste at very different points as the food moves from farm to our table. And so what are some, just broadly speaking, what are some of the problems that you see that AI is currently solving? And really, how have these technologies evolved over the last decade? And I might note that we will obviously touch on generative AI. I mean, the first paper that really brought into the mainstream came out in 2017. So we're talking 7 years ago at this point.
Yeah, I think a lot of the products in market today, particularly around food waste reduction, are based on machine learning, stuff that really optimizes and helps things like supply chains and really our decision support tools. We're seeing a lot of AI in places like farms. I mean, John Deere has been investing heavily, and so that actually I see as a food waste reduction tool. If you are able to spray pesticides on green type of solutions where you can identify a weed that's green next to another plant that's green, you're wasting less food, you're putting less poison into the atmosphere, and you're just making things work better. And all the way through to the storage place, to the retailer, into the home, we're seeing some interesting stuff. I think you guys have supported companies that I think we talked about. One of the ones that's using a sensor that can detect ethylene gas in apple warehouses or bananas, and they can market map. Companies called Strella. They can basically do the life cycle of the perfect banana. And so these are things that I think combine IoT with machine learning based AI that are really creating powerful tools that are in market today.
Awesome. So I think Strella is a really good example of both how complicated it is, and I know we've talked about it a little bit, but maybe you could explain, in our last panel we talked about how they had to basically build a model that just predicts bananas ripening, which was just kind of the most fascinating thing to me to learn about, and how you actually have to also build a piece of hardware. I don't know if you'd be willing to just kind of illustrate the complexity of what it actually takes to make a useful prediction and how they were turning that into an actual decision.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm a journalist analyst, I'm not a computer scientist, so if I hallucinate like ChatGPT on this answer, yeah, you can't blame me. But I think really it's all around, as we hear repeatedly from AI model builders around the data sets. And so that's just a fascinating world in the world of food ripening. There's a job called the ripener, and the ripener sits in the ripening room, and they are very old school. They're like baseball scouts before Moneyball and sabermetrics. They're basically just making judgment calls. But if we can put tools in their hands that can really truly understand how fast the banana's ripening or the avocado's ripening, I think we can just waste way less food. I think it's just a really valuable tool that, again, is seeing really strong success. Strella was a startup just a couple years ago, a couple young graduates out of college, and their story is fantastic because they're just in, I think, it's a huge number, like 40% of Apple warehouses today. So they're just having great success because I think we need these tools.
I agree. So I think a lot of what we've been hearing about technology generally and AI is very much upstream in the supply chain. Obviously, or I think as many of us know, consumer waste, household waste is a massive problem. I think we calculate about 40 million tons a year that is thrown out by consumers. More and more people are composting, but particularly given the role of methane in landfill, it's very important. So what are we seeing in terms of AI supporting consumers, if you wanted to lean a little bit more into the generative AI. I know we've been talking about that particular type of technology and how it might support consumers. And if you're not seeing, where do you think we could be going with that? What are the sort of the opportunities or the sort of emerging sort of stuff that we're starting to hear about?
Yeah, I think where I see generative AI taking hold now is in creative types of content building, not necessarily in like decision tool support. And in the consumer space, it might be around things like recipe apps, because what recipes are creative art. I mean, creating a food match with another food match and they take these two flavor notes and say it works, that's, in a sense, takes creativity. And we've seen since IBM started building IBM Chef Watson, I think maybe in 2010, we've seen this really incredible flavor matching type of AI. And so I think that's one area where we could see it. I think in favor, more directly on waste reduction, while I don't think it's generative AI, I think what Mill is doing in kind of maybe using some algorithmic understanding of your composting is really interesting. And I think, you know, those guys, those founders come from Nest. Nest created a huge behavior change. That's really hard to do. Create a huge behavior change in Americans. We are very lazy and stuck, fixed in our ways. And they brought the Nest thermostat and created this whole tool around watching how much energy we could save. They're trying to do the same with food waste. I think that's what's going to take in the consumer spaces, showing people through dashboards and reminders and nudges that we're wasting $2,000 a year on food waste. And when you translate it to real dollars, that's really important because food waste is not political. We can all unify behind food waste reduction. And I think if we give people the right tools. So I think if Mill can do that, and I think Mill is probably going to be a company that also goes into food containers. There's about 5 startups redoing food containers. I think one of them are here. I know ReFed has supported one through grants, Whisk. They were at my event last week, Smart Kitchen Summit. Those tools are really interesting. Not super heavy on like generative AI, but I think they're using algorithmic machine learning and sensors to basically create really interesting information.
So basically, we're talking about like the Fitbit of food waste, is that? And actually, my watch just told me I need to stand up, so it didn't really, but you know, I just came up with that joke on the fly there. So kind of, so far, we've been talking about the opportunities and the successes and the things that that we're excited about, but are not really quite there. But we know that for every, you know, what is it? I'm sure Alex knows the statistic. For every startup that succeed, X number fail. And, you know, given your past, not just in sort of like AI systems, but in technology and AI, where are some of the things where you've seen these solutions not pan out? And what are some of the lessons that we can take away if we're trying to utilize these systems or trying to build some of these systems?
I mean, I think Scott Heimendinger was on stage last week, and he said a really interesting thing about the smart kitchen wave and consumer IoT. There was a tendency among startups at that time, around 2014, 2015, to say, hey, if I could slap Wi-Fi on something and make it connected, maybe I have a startup. And so I think there's like, The Verge wrote a headline, we don't need this Wi-Fi connected rolling pin. And we don't. And so I think I see a similar danger today in that I've seen like every single not every single, but I've seen a lot of guys that were talking blockchain and Web3 3 years ago are now suddenly saying they're AI companies. And it makes sense if you're pitching your deck and you're trying to raise them your next round. But I just think that there's a danger here. And I think if I'm a large food company or a CPG brand or a small specialty food company, I would just bring someone on staff who's fluent in AI. You don't need a computer scientist because not everyone can have a computer scientist on staff, but know the difference between what real AI is and what is machine learning. Because I think we need to be really careful because I think we're in the, we talk a little bit about the Gartner hype cycle. Yes. We're kind of in the, you said I could swear on stage. Yeah, you need a bullshit detector when it comes to AI nowadays because we're in the frothy height of the Gartner hype cycle.
Yes. If you don't know the Gartner hype cycle, check it out. Where some people, I mean, maybe we're on the way to the trough of disillusionment. I still think we're on the way to the top. And our goal here should be to prevent us get that trough and get right to maturity and application. And so actually building off of some of these risks or challenges, what does it take to build a system that can actually produce a useful insight. What do we need? I know that, we talk about labor, we talk about data sets. I mean, what are the things that people need to keep in mind when they're actually, they want to build something or they want to connect something to their systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the stage earlier, on the AI panel, we talked about how you need to be able to make your LLM smart. And I don't want to get nerdy on AI, but if you are licensing OpenAI's technology through an API, you probably need to think about making it smart, because OpenAI's technology is not food smart. It'll hallucinate. And so you need to find a partner that can create intelligence around food. More practically, though, I would just say you need to probably find the right partner. So if a good example is Kraft Heinz knew that they didn't have the muscle. A lot of big food companies don't have the internal capability to do AI, so they need to find the right partner. Kraft Heinz decided that they just can do that. I mean, Kraft Heinz probably doesn't have a bunch of computer scientists sitting around, so they partnered up with Notco, who's built their own LLM, and now Notco and Kraft Heinz are making these wonderful plant-based food solutions that they're putting out into the market. So I would just suggest there's a lot of people who you could partner with around AI if you're a big food brand or you're a technology solution provider, or just that's what I would recommend you do.
Yeah. The thing that I like to tell people is start with the problem you're trying to solve, as opposed to just saying, the joke was, particularly when I was younger, this is going to date me maybe a little bit, but social media had sort of just become a thing, and you had your bosses and they would say, we need a Facebook. And you would go, what for? And they say, I don't know, I read about it in the New York Times. And so we need one of those. And there is a risk that we are in that moment. That's that hype.
Do we need a Dilbert cartoon now that we can show on the stage?
Yeah, yes, please. So we're sort of approaching time. I want to kind of just ask, what's the future state? Where should we be excited about? What sector should we be excited about? Where should we be a little bit more skeptical, or sort of let the sort of very specific, scrappy entrepreneurs sort of stay here while we're working on sort of like at scale, if you will?
Yeah, I think we're seeing the solutions in the supply chains at retail, at the farm, and the warehousing, making massive differences today. So I'm really excited about that. Solutions like Afresh, Winnow, using computer vision, really exciting technologies, making huge differences today. Where I am more skeptical, which is weird because I'm a longtime consumer technology person. I get more nerdy about kitchen gadgets than maybe anyone. I just think the consumer space is hardest. And I've talked to like Dana and folks at Refed. You guys recognize how challenging that is. So I really am, I applaud you guys for giving grants to companies like WISP, because that's a tough space. Because it really does involve behavior change. And so we did the Shark Tank about an hour ago on stage, and we were talking about, we were judging these two solutions. And I thought, this sensor company should probably team up with this app company. And so I think we need to break down some of these silos and get some of these solution providers to work together to really solve this problem, because it's a really difficult space to solve, particularly in the consumer space.
I actually think that is a great metaphor for how we should be all working together to solve food waste. It's not just your technologists, it's folks working across the supply chain, people who are not just working on food waste reduction, but working on efficiencies that will also, if you're handling your food better, you're going to ultimately need less of that food. Anyways, any parting shots before we wrap it in 21, 20?
No, I don't want to keep anyone from their drinks any longer, so let's go get some cocktails.
All right.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Great job managing time up here. I'm impressed with both of you.
Very tight.
Wow, I'm impressed. That was a remarkable use of time. Wait, hold on, 1 minute. 1 minute. I appreciate everyone who wants to get out there. I just want to start and say, I know it's hard to listen and pay attention all day. You all made it. You did a good job. Your prize is happy hour in about 30 seconds. Happy hour will be on the 3rd floor, so we just go down to where we've been. Everything's down there. There is some, I'm told there are some openings on the no-host dinners. Those signups will be there. If you decided that you do want to join, please check out those lists. Otherwise, whatever your plans are, please remember to open yourself up to the unexpected. I will be asking about it tomorrow, so that's your hint. Tomorrow, I do want to just say two quick things. 8 o'clock breakfast, same as today. We start 9 sharp. Lunch will be served later. I want to tell you that for those that need extra snacks or a bigger breakfast or whatever. Lunch is at 1 o'clock tomorrow. There will be a to-go option if anyone needs to take it to go to the airport or anything else. I'm not going to get their schedule. You have it all. And with that, congrats. You made it through day 1, and let's go get a drink.